Today on Cook's Country, Bridget shows Chris how to make classic chocolate cream cupcakes at home. Next, Jack challenges Chris to a tasting of hot cocoa. And finally, Julia updates an American favorite, Texas sheet cake. That's all right here on Cook's Country.
Here's the question of the day. What is a cupcake? Well, in the 19th century, it meant two very different things. Cakes that were measured using cups, like a cup of butter, 2 cups of sugar, 3 cups of flour, and 4 eggs. It also meant individual small cakes. They were cooked, let's say, in special iron pans. And with a wood cook stove or even a coal cook stove, it was hard to regulate the ovens. So it was much easier to cook lots of little cakes than one big one, which could end up being over or undercooked. Well, fast forward 1919, the first commercial chocolate cupcake was born, which eventually became known as the Hostess cupcake. And in 1950, the squiggle went on the top, the vanilla filling in the middle. They were so popular that there was a Hostess Cupcake Club founded by Suzanne Rutland, who ate 4 Hostess cupcakes a day for a life total of 50,000. And what was the secret password to the club? Creamy. So now we're going to make one here in the kitchen. Why would we do that? Well, we tasted the Hostess cupcake recently. Wasn't nearly as good, nearly as chocolatey as we remembered. So we're going to go into the kitchen with Bridget, reverse engineer the Hostess chocolate cupcake and make it even better than you remember. Well, it's time for True Confessions. You ready?
Sure.
When I was a kid, don't say a long time ago, after milking in the summer, we used to go to the country store, which is right down the road. I get a ride from the farmer I work for, and I would buy a number of things, including Hostess cupcakes and ring dings. And you see, you like me more.
Really?
I'm real
Interesting.
now.
Well, I just happen to have a gift for you. You're always bringing gifts to me. I've got a gift for you.
I don't make you eat the gifts.
Well, why don't you eat that one?
Okay, so I have fond memories
Yes.
of this. I do.
Okay.
I mean, say Hostess cupcake, and I'm there.
Let's see if they stick.
They're great. We don't have to.
Now tell me what you really think.
Well, they're not terrible.
No.
Okay. I mean, they're okay.
To a 10-year-old?
Yeah.
They're great.
But it doesn't have much, it really doesn't have much chocolate flavor. The texture's not bad at all, actually, of the cake.
That's right.
And the inside is a substance not known to man. So this is okay, but Bridget's here to make a much better Hostess style
That's right.
chocolate cupcake. Now, I'm going to hold this
All right.
and back, and so we're going to do a taste test at the end.
Perfect.
Not to put any pressure on you at all. Okay.
None at all, Chris. Well, I'm going to tell you, we're going to do a lot better. We're going to put chocolate into the chocolate cream cupcake, and we're going to make this the easiest cupcake ever.
Okay.
How about that? All right, starting with the cupcake. Now, I mentioned that we are going to put the chocolate back in chocolate cream cupcakes. And this is natural cocoa. Now, we're using natural cocoa. It has the right flavor for this, but also it's going to react with a little bit of an acid later on to help us get lift. And this is based on kind of a devil's food cupcake recipe. Now, here's the chocolate part. So that was 1/3 cup natural cocoa, and this is 1/3 cup of chocolate chips. These are semi-sweet chocolate chips. So right into the bowl that goes. Now, that's going to add a lot of flavor. But to boost it even more, I've got 1 tablespoon of espresso powder. That really gives a darker, more adult flavor to these cupcakes.
I do have a question. It's kind
Sure.
of odd to use chocolate chips instead of regular, cooking chocolate or
Right.
bar chocolate.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was for practical sake in this recipe. We're going to use chocolate chips a little later on to make our glaze. They actually help the glaze set up a little better. So we thought, why not just use them here rather than call for 2 different kinds of chocolate?
Simplicity.
All right?
Okay.
I told you it was going to be simple. All right, so now we want to melt the chocolate and also draw out more flavors from that cocoa. We're going to do that by adding a 1/2 cup of hot water. This was just boiling a minute ago. That's really going to bloom that cocoa, let all those volatile oils and compounds come out, and they're going to taste a lot better. It's going to melt the chocolate. So just want to whisk this together very quickly until it's smooth. This is all right in the bowl mixing. Okay, so now I'm going to add some of my other ingredients here. I've got 3/4 cup of granulated sugar and a 1/2 cup of sour cream. Now, this is one of those acidic ingredients that makes the cake tender. And we want a tender cake here, but we also want it to be sturdy enough that it's going to be able to take the filling process that we're going to subject it to a little bit later. I've got a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. Believe it or not, we preferred vegetable oil over butter in this recipe. I've got 2 eggs and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Again, just going to whisk this until it's fully
You're looking
combined.
more and more like Betty Crocker from here. You know?
Am I?
Yeah, you are.
All right, it's time to add the dry ingredients here, and I've already mixed them in this bowl. This is 1 cup of all-purpose flour. It's a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and that's going to be the leavener that's going to react with the sour cream.
Cocoa.
That's right. And then also a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. All right, whisk that to combine.
So far, pretty easy, I have to say.
I would say. All right, so that is fully combined. Now I can move and put these right into my 12-cup muffin tin here. And we've greased and floured it. Actually, what we use is one of those baking sprays that contains a little bit of flour. They're great, especially for muffin tins, because they get into every crevice. If you didn't have that, you would just butter or grease and then flour the pan very well. So I'm going to divide this mixture using a scoop. Makes it a little bit neater. All right, so now it's time to bake these, and I'm going to put them in a 325-degree oven until a toothpick inserted in the center comes out pretty clean. It may have a few moist crumbs attached. That's going to take 18 to 22 minutes. All right, welcome to Filling Central, Chris. You remember this filling?
Yeah, the worst part of this actually was the filling in terms of flavor.
Right, but the texture...
Texture was good.
Texture is perfect, and texture is exactly what we wanted. We wanted that marshmallowy, fluffy interior. So here's some examples of some fillings that we made, Chris. If you take a spoonful of that, you'll see that's 7-minute frosting. It's a mixture of sugar and egg whites, a little bit of water. So you can see, right texture, but not rich enough. We want fat in the center of our cupcakes.
If it ain't got fat, it's not going on Bridget's table. Okay, next.
All right, next up, that is a mixture of fluff, which we love, right texture, you know, marshmallow cream right out of the jar. And we mixed it with butter, so it had the right richness. The problem is the texture now.
Well,
so,
now we want fat and texture.
well, just stick that spoon straight up and down there.
Oh, woo.
Look, that's great.
Yeah, that's great.
We added a packet of gelatin, and that's what we got. We got a rubber ball.
So, fluff, when you heat it, it loses its property in terms of texture, right? It gets loose.
It does get loose.
Okay.
So you have to stabilize it. I mean, it says marshmallow cream, and marshmallows have gelatin in them, but marshmallow cream does not. So that's what it's missing.
Okay.
All right, so what we ended up with is basically this mixture with a lot less gelatin. So it's going to have the richness, it's going to have the right texture. And it starts off with this bowl. This is 3 tablespoons of water here, and 3/4 teaspoon of unflavored gelatin that I sprinkled over the top. Now I've got to melt the gelatin. So I'm going to take it into the back and put it in the microwave for about 30 seconds until it's bubbling all around the edges. Okay? I'm back. Just 30 seconds in the microwave was all we needed. We've got 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. It's not melted. That's important because the softened butter is going to help to cool down this mixture and give more creamy emulsified texture. If you wouldn't mind, that's 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Thank you. And just a pinch of salt. Now this mixture is still pretty warm. We don't want to add our next ingredient to it yet. It'll start to melt it a little bit. So I'm going to let this cool just a little bit, about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay? All right, Chris, so this is cooled down. It's still a little warm to the touch because now it's time that we're going to add our last ingredient. This is 1 1/4 cups of marshmallow fluff.
Okay.
I'm going to put this right in there. Now you can also use marshmallow cream. That will work just as well. Just whisk this in. Doesn't want to go at first. Just want to whisk this until it's completely smooth. So the gelatin has not set yet. In order to set it, it has to sit in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes. And that's perfect because the cupcakes still have a few minutes in the oven. Okay. All right, Chris, what we have here are cooled cupcakes. Now, while you were gone, I tested the cupcakes. They were in there for about 18 to 20 minutes, tested them with a toothpick, and there was just a few crumbs attached to that toothpick. So I brought them out here and I cooled them on a rack in the pan for 10 minutes, and then took them out and cooled them completely. And here they are.
Nicely done.
Thank you very much. Now, rather than make a complicated frosting, we wanted to do just a simple ganache. So what I have here is 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter with a 1/2 cup of those semi-sweet chocolate chips that I used earlier. Now we microwave this until it melted, and then we just let it sit here for about 10 minutes until it cooled down.
That's because chips set up better than regular chocolate,
That's
right?
exactly right.
Okay.
But before we use the glaze, we got to do some work on these cupcakes. We've got to figure out a way to get that filling inside. So I'm just going to take a paring knife, and starting at about 1/8 inch from the edge, just make a 45-degree angle cut all around the cupcake. Essentially, what I've got here is a nice little cone. All right, so I just want to take off a little bit of that cone. And
No, wait.
well, I'm not going to throw it away.
No, I'll keep it around.
And I'm going to put that top right beside the cupcake because it's amazing how well they do not fit if you get them mixed up.
Every top has its own cupcake.
That's exactly right.
Or every cupcake has its own top.
So there's a paring knife over there for you too, Chris. Starting about 1/8 inch from the edge. There we go.
Yeah.
Good job.
Now, once in a while when I do a good job, your voice gives it away.
The inflection.
Oh, my Lord.
My goodness. So we're ready to move on. Keep eating those scraps there. You're not going to be hungry.
Anymore. Yum.
So if you could move that bowl of filling over here.
Somebody's been in the fluff.
Yeah, it does look like it. Maybe I took a spoonful of it. But what I did is I reserved a third cup of that into a pastry bag. We're going to use the same mixture to make our little squiggles on top.
This is the squiggle bag.
That's right,
okay.
squiggle bag.
There you go.
All right, so I've got the mixture here, and you can see how it's really firmed up. So we can use a tablespoon of this mixture, put it right in there. Now see, that's quite a bit of filling. And pop the top.
And pop the top.
Right back on. It's mesmerizing, isn't it, Chris?
No, I am desperately awaiting the moment when I will be eating more than one of these.
Yes, I can feel the breath on the back of my neck. All right, so Chris, all that's left to do is apply the glaze. So if you wouldn't mind helping, there's a little offset spatula there. I'm gonna apply about 2 teaspoons of the glaze there. If you wouldn't mind swirling that all around, completely covering it. Last one there, Chris. You're almost out of a job.
No, I get the eating job.
That's true. All right, now as this glaze sits, it's gonna set, harden up just a little bit, and we wanna let that happen for about 10 minutes.
So 10 minutes and it'll be squiggle time.
Squiggle
Here
time.
at Cook's Country.
It's squiggle time. So I've got here a piping bag, and it's got a third cup of that filling that I applied in there. Just wanna push it all the way down. It's got a very, very fine tip. And you can do this with a Ziploc bag. You can push the filling down into one side or one corner of the Ziploc bag and just snip off the tiniest little amount, because if it's too big of a hole, you want to end up with a curlicue.
Okay.
So, just applying a little bit of pressure. Whee! There.
It's very nice.
All right.
Yeah.
There we go.
Now, we're going to do a taste test at the end. It's not a blind taste test, but I said we would compare what you've done to what the great and noble Hostess Company has done.
Weren't there 2 halves there a second ago?
Don't worry about that. While I was cooling, I had to do something. Okay, so here we go. Ready?
All right.
This looks good.
Mind if I join
It looks
you?
glossier. Go ahead.
All right.
Now let me take a taste of the Hostess just to make sure. Oh. Mice will get it.
Where it belongs.
Oh.
This is so chocolatey. And that filling is so buttery, too. Oh, it tastes so good.
So here in the kitchens of Cook's Country, we reverse engineered the Hostess cupcake. We started by adding a lot of chocolate flavor. So instead of just cocoa, we also added chocolate chips and espresso powder. And then the filling was a real problem. We tried 7-minute icing, lots of other things. It turns out 3 ingredients did it: marshmallow, cream, butter for richness, and a little bit of gelatin to make it set up. And finally, the icing was a simple ganache, which is the chocolate chips once again melted with butter, and the squiggle was just the inside filling on top. So there you have it, a fabulous Hostess-style, cream-filled, squiggle-top chocolate cupcake from the kitchens of Cook's Country. I came all the way out here for cocoa.
You came all the way here for cocoa. Now imagine it's cold and snowy, and you've just come in.
It's Vermont. It's usually cold and snowy.
Yes, and you've just come in from ice skating. So we tasted 8 brands of hot cocoa mixes. We had 21 tasters in our tasting panel, plus the studio audience. Biggest factor is chocolate. Some of them have a big chocolate flavor. Some of them, you have to go looking for the chocolate.
Well, this is the worst. This is like a Swiss Miss deal, which, by the way, I make homemade cocoa for my kids. And I made it twice, and they didn't drink it, and they got the Swiss Miss out.
It's mild. And kids especially will end up having a somewhat different preferences with hot cocoa, because the really intense chocolatey ones can seem too adult for them. We're both adults.
Or they stuff the mug with marshmallows, and they pour a little bit of hot chocolate on it. I like this one a lot.
Okay. What is it that you're liking about that sample?
Tastes like cocoa. I mean, it just, this pure flavor. This is much too sweet. That, I think, is my favorite. This one, it doesn't have that much chocolate flavor. It's sweet. It has something else going on. This one's kind of odd. By the way, Jack always does. This is going to be the $400 cup of cocoa that was handmade. My family has a motto, which I've stated a number of times, which is always wrong but never in doubt. So I will be definitive. This is clearly my winner, and that's my loser.
So where would you like to start?
The winner.
The winner is Godiva. The tasting panel loved it. I must say the studio audience wasn't so much in agreement. I don't know. I think it may have been too much chocolate for some of the people in the studio audience. But the tasting,
is that possible?
It is possible. It's got a ton of chocolate flavor, very low sugar.
Really good.
I personally, this was my favorite brand because it is like having a chocolate bar in liquid form.
Jack, we should just note for the television audience that you and I have now agreed on something.
We have agreed on
That's
something.
amazing. Okay, and then this one was the loser.
This was the loser.
Swiss Miss, yes.
From the tasting panel. Dare I say it, I don't want to embarrass the studio audience. This was their top choice. It's clear they don't like a lot of chocolate. This one is very sweet, very little chocolate flavor.
This one was sweet, didn't have a ton of chocolate. It wasn't bad, though.
That's the Ghirardelli. It was our runner-up, number
not
2. That's widely available in supermarkets. Obviously, the Godiva is our favorite choice, but isn't all that widely available.
And this one is probably homemade or something.
Yes, this is a homemade mix that has white chocolate chips ground into the cocoa with some confectioner's sugar and non-fat dry milk. You didn't appreciate the homemade mix.
Well, it had other flavors in it, but you prefer this dough too, right?
Yes, but there is some bad news about that.
Oh, this is why I have to go get like a second mortgage to buy this?
Yeah, well, that is $10, and it works out to about $1 for a cup of hot cocoa, not including the cost of the milk you have to add.
So the audience is like my kids. They like Swiss Miss, but Jack and I liked on our tasting panel back in the test kitchen, love Godiva. Expensive, but lots of chocolate flavor. Texas sheet cake. How come Vermont doesn't have a sheet cake?
Yeah, right?
It'd be too small.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Texas sheet cake is a chocolate cake. It's fairly thin, has a chocolate pecan icing, which is put on when the cake is warm.
That's right.
So you get 3 layers, because in between you get that kind of
That's the
fudgy
key.
thing. Now, we tried to find out why it was called Texas sheet cake, and nobody really knew. It was a big cake.
It's huge.
Big state, that's probably why. Lady
Yeah.
Bird Johnson was said to love it. And you can find it in a lot of community cookbooks. It was a potluck supper, church supper kind of dish. And it was a problem, though. We tasted it, and
There was almost no chocolate flavor in them, and a lot of them only had a 1/4 cup of cocoa, which doesn't give a big cake enough flavor. And a lot were made with margarine, which we really didn't like the flavor of. It tastes a little artificial. So the first thing we're going to do is melt some chocolate, and this is how we really gave the cake some good flavor. This is 8 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate, and we're going to melt it down with a little bit of butter, and this is 4 tablespoons of butter. The other key we found is to use a little bit of oil. The oil keeps the cake really moist, and it really allows the chocolate flavor to shine through. And that's 3/4 of a cup of vegetable oil.
this seems like a lot of oil.
It's a big cake.
She was waiting for me to
Yeah,
ask
I was,
that.
I know. 3/4 of a cup of water. And of course, the water helps bloom the cocoa, bring out its flavor. And this is 1/2 cup of Dutch processed cocoa.
Well, is it also because water obviously is not milk and dairy, which means
That's right.
the chocolate comes through better?
That's right. That's exactly it. And we're going to melt this over medium heat. It should take about 3 or 5 minutes. We're going to stir it till it's nice and smooth. So I'm going to leave you in charge of the chocolate.
You know she's slightly nervous.
Don't burn it. The other components of the cake, there's dry components and eggs. In terms of the dry components, mix together 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 cups of sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And then, of course, we're going to add the egg component, and this is 2 eggs with 2 yolks, and a little vanilla, 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And the dairy component, we found recipes with buttermilk and sour cream and regular milk. We liked sour cream the best. Add a nice little tang to the cake. And this is just 1/4 cup of sour cream. We're going to whisk this together. How's that chocolate looking?
I think it's finally melted. Yeah.
That's right.
There we are.
Sometimes it winds up looking a little bit broken if you look closely. That's fine. So you can pour that right into there. And of course, that's the melted chocolate mixture into the dry ingredients. And we're going to whisk this together. It's going to get a little thick, so we'll switch to a spatula. If you could hand me that spatula.
I have to say, I've always been extremely fond of Texans. And now I'm
Now you
even fonder.
Now you know why. You want to give it a good swipe around.
Yeah.
Make sure we got all the flour in there. That looks pretty good.
Well, they never do anything halfway.
No.
If they're going to eat a cake, they're going to a lot of sugar, big size.
So that was the egg mixture, and we're just going to whisk this in until it's incorporated.
So far versus the original recipe, a little sour cream,
Yep.
and then also the vegetable oil was
Vegetable
slightly
oil
different.
and butter. All right. So that looks pretty smooth and consistent. And we're going to put it into this rimmed baking sheet. And of course, I greased it already. Spread the batter out. This batter's pretty thick. And so you want to make sure just to spread it out because it bakes in like 18 to 20 minutes, pretty fast. So it doesn't have a lot of time to settle. I'll leave a little on the spatula for you.
It's a good idea.
Into a 350 oven, middle rack. So it's been about 20 minutes that this cake has been in the oven. We'll test it for doneness on the counter. So here we have a toothpick, right into the center, come up, No batter, just a few crumbs.
Looks
attached.
perfect. It is perfect.
And a few crumbs on the toothpick are a good thing. It means the cake's moist. So while that's just starting to cool for a few minutes, we're going to whisk together frosting. Again, the frosting goes on the cake when it's warm, so you get 3 distinct layers. Where that frosting meets the warm cake, it turns nice and fudgy, which is a good thing. So for the frosting, half a cup of cream, stick of butter, half a cup of cocoa, which is way more than the original recipes we found had, and a little bit of corn syrup. So that was a tablespoon of corn syrup. And we're just gonna whisk this together until it's all melted. And then we're gonna take it off the heat. All right, so that's all melted together. We'll turn the heat off and add a tablespoon of vanilla. And then we're gonna whisk in 3 cups of confectioner sugar. Again, this is a cup less than the original recipe. And this will make a really gorgeous glaze.
This is like eating only 2 buckets of Kentucky Fried Chicken instead of 3. I mean, there is still a lot of sugar.
There is a lot of sugar.
But it's a confectioner sugar frosting.
You know, frostings always have a lot of sugar. So you can see that's nice and smooth. All right, so warm frosting, warm cake. We'll even it out with a spatula, but it helps if you try to get it on in somewhat of an even layer.
I can understand why this would be really good for potluck.
Yeah.
Because it's big, you can cut into small pieces. It's very rich, so it serves a lot.
All right, and to smooth this to an even layer. It's almost like self-leveling cement. You know, it pretty much evens itself out once you get it spread. It'll be a nice, smooth, glossy surface.
Self-leveling cement.
Yeah, you ever use that stuff?
Have you?
Yeah, it's fun. It does. It levels.
She works construction on the weekends to make ends meet.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Great.
And so this is a cup of toasted pecans. We're going to sprinkle them over the top, and as the frosting cools, they'll stick right in. So we're going to let this cool on the counter for an hour and then refrigerate it for an hour. Let the cake really cool completely. You get that fudgy layer and let the chocolate set up.
I'll wash the cake for you.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah,
We'll
half
be
of
back.
it'll be left.
Half of it'll be left. We'll be back in a couple hours.
All right, so we're ready to taste this guy. It's been sitting on the counter for an hour, again in the refrigerator for another hour to help that chocolate set. I'm gonna make pretty big slices. Oh, that looks good.
All right, there we go. Texas sheet cake.
Oh, this looks awesome. I love the texture, that dense, fudgy texture.
Yeah, but it's got kind of a silky, satiny texture too. It's soft. That is unbelievable.
It's so chocolatey.
So our version of Texas sheet cake started, of course, with the cake. And we did 3 things. We had 8 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate instead of cocoa, a little bit of vegetable oil as well, and finally a touch of sour cream. Just 2 things on the frosting, a little bit less confectioner sugar, a cup less, and then a little bit of corn syrup. The nice sheen, you can see the nice gloss on the top. So there you have it. Coast Country, a Yankee version, it's true, but a great version of Texas sheet cake.